Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stoliarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our U.S. Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon of Sunday, June 15th, 2025. And we are pleased to offer a fascinating conversation today with the founder of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Joining us is our illustrious panel of U.S. Transhumanist Party members, officers, and advisors, including our Director of Visual Art and current Vice Chairman, Art Ramon Garcia, our Director of Scholarship, Dr. Dan Elton, our Biotechnology Advisor and founder and CEO of Sierra Sciences, Dr. Bill Andrews, and our friend and allied member, David Wood from the UK. He is the founder of London Futurists and the executive director of LEVF, the Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation. He was also one of the co-founders of Transhumanist Party UK when it existed, which then was rebranded to Future Surge. And our special guest today is none other than Zoltan Istvan, who founded the Transhumanist Party in 2014. He ran as its first presidential candidate in 2016. And after that time, he stepped down from any leadership roles in the Transhumanist Party, but we've, of course, continued our communication. He has remained a valued advisor, and he has run for office several times since then as a libertarian for governor of California in 2018, then as a Republican challenging Donald Trump for president in 2020, and now he is running for governor of California again in 2026 as a Democrat. So, Zoltan, welcome. It's a pleasure to speak with you again. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to first share some information about your campaign and what made you choose to run as a Democrat in particular, especially considering your prior runs as a transhumanist, libertarian, and Republican. I'm curious if countering some of the policies of Trump may play a role in this, or are you just being pragmatic about this in terms of seeking to maximize your chances with the California electorate?
Sure. Well, first, thanks, Jenna, for having me here. It's nice to be back and see some familiar faces. And I apologize that I only have till 2 p.m., so just about an hour from now. But let me answer, I guess, that big 800-pound gorilla question, which is why am I, running on different parties and have ended up at the Democrats. Let me just say, first and foremost, my wife works at Planned Parenthood. So to have actually run on any party that would be opposed to Planned Parenthood being married to my wife of 16 years, it would be incredibly difficult. So when I was running for Republicans, and even plenty of libertarians now oppose abortion, I would have a very strong, time to do that because of what my family brings to the table, and my wife particularly. So, coming home to the Democrats is really, it was either here or the Transhumanist Party in terms of those agendas working, just because women's rights is such a big thing in my personal family. So that's just, kind of really what's happened. Additionally, it's impossible to run in California on, I think, any other party other than the Democrats, because it's essentially a one-party state. Now, there are lots of variations within the party and the ideologies and stuff like that within the Democrats in California. And I'm probably the most right-leaning of all the Democrats running for governor right now. Of course, that still makes me a centrist in terms of liberal values, because I've sort of always been a centrist. And despite changing parties here and there, honestly, my ideas have changed 15, 20% maximum over a 15-year period. It's not like things have really changed in how I deal with things. It's just parties. I am true to science, the scientific method, to technology, to transhumanism, life extension. Those are the things that matter to me still, and they're not going to change whether I'm at this party or that party. It just happens to be that right now in running for office, it makes the most sense to run as a Democrat. And also, I think, as I mentioned, the very first thing, just for family orientation. My wife works at Planned Parenthood as a medical doctor. It just makes most sense to be here doing that right now.
Yes, thank you very much, Zoltan, for that response. And when you ran in 2018 for California governor, you ran as a libertarian. Of course, the Libertarian Party has really changed since that time. And I would say, based on those changes, the Libertarian Party has left me. So it's also the case, my views from, let's say, the middle of the last decade haven't changed that much. And I supported ultimately the Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson in 2016, since I couldn't vote for you in Nevada, Zoltan. But I found that the Libertarian Party has really shifted in a kind of, well, a fractured direction, you could say, or directions, but there are many people in the Libertarian Party who are now anti-technology, who are more of these, let's say, back to nature, reactionary Luddite types, and I don't appreciate that. But when you ran for governor of California, you got 14,462 votes as a libertarian in the open primary. And I actually think that's a good result for a campaign like the one you ran. But the reason why I wanted to bring this up is California has this open primary system where anybody can essentially participate. And then the top two winners of that primary, who, as you correctly pointed out, have essentially been Democrats every single time, are the ones who advance to the general election. So I'm curious to understand if your decision to run as a Democrat is predicated on the expectation that you might actually get into the top two that way, whereas running under any other label you wouldn't? Or do you not consider that realistic in terms of how the primary results would turn out?
Well, just trying to be as honest as I can, it would be very difficult to get into the top two. And historically, a Republican does get into the top two just because the state is pretty much split 60-40. And that might not seem like a wide margin, but it's almost always the same. There has been very little breaking. Maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger was the last person to actually break through. But right now, it just seems like there's really no chance. And they had the recall of Gavin Newsom. I mean, Gavin won by a lot. I don't know about the top two. A real goal here is to try to get into the debates, end up in the top five. And an ideal scenario would be something like Kamala Harris, former vice president, decides to run. I'm in the debates with her. I get to ask her some very hard transhumanist AI questions about the future and make my mark. There's a possibility that very good possibility, probably, I won't win the gubernatorial race, but this may transition into a race for the presidency then for me. And my whole team knows that. And, we've been pulling quite a few Andrew Yang people, because a lot of my policies now are relying more and more on basic income. And we'll see how we can do. I'm not sure, though, that in California, I'm going to break into the top two. We are trying our best. And I got to be honest, sometimes it just takes one single donor with a lot of money to push you through, and all of a sudden your team expands by 10 times, or maybe a Joe Rogan interview or something of that nature. We're trying everything we can. We're getting a lot of traffic. I mean, we're getting a huge amount of actual social media traffic and articles and stuff, but it's not enough right now. But let me just say also, we're over 12 months, I believe, or close 12 months about exactly, from the primaries. So we're still very early in the season for a gubernatorial run. There's not a lot of news happening. So it's really an open field. But I think within 12 months, AI and automation and robots are going to be hitting the job market so severely that the things that I'm speaking about are going to resonate and everyone else is going to be left in the dust. So maybe there is a possibility to really rise up quickly in a viral moment and take the stage.
Yes, thank you for that response, and that gave us very good insight into your strategy. Now, one of our audience members who's also a very dedicated contributor to the Transhumanist Party, Josh Universe, notes that he hopes that your transhumanist ideals are still similar. And you said essentially your views have changed maybe by about 10 to 15%. But I would like you to expand on this. And in particular, would you be willing to openly embrace and articulate the ideas of transhumanism and of radical life extension in the course of your gubernatorial campaign?
Well, of course. So first of all, I think, funny enough, life extension is now a mainstream movement. And one of the reasons life extension is mainstream is because the hundreds of billions of dollars pouring into the field. If you pour enough money into a field, all of a sudden it becomes mainstream. And the same thing, artificial intelligence, which 6-8 years ago was still a science fiction concept, is now one of the most hotly debated topics, probably far more than climate change at the moment. And so, ideas that were once quite fringe are now at the forefront. Now, maybe transhumanism in itself is still not that hot or still not that popular to talk about, but that has a lot to do with the fact that AI is overwhelming the transhumanism movement. We always considered AI to be a part of the transhumanism movement, but all of a sudden it's like, wait a sec, now that it's here and now that we sort of don't have control, or we may not have control in the next few years, how do we even deal with such a thing that could have its own consciousness and potentially become very powerful than us? So it has kind of, to some extent, left transhumanism in the dust, at least in terms of media coverage and the public's questioning of it. So those things are right up there, but I would absolutely be discussing all things. In fact, everyone knows my campaign is very much based on artificial intelligence. It's based on achieving the next stage of life for humanity, which is the transhuman age. And definitely life extension is still at the forefront. I may not be talking transhumanism that much. I may not be saying the word, but to be honest, thankfully the word has continued to grow. But what's really grown is the concept of the word behind the word. You don't even need the word anymore to understand we are entering an age, with Neuralink and driverless cars and CRISPR, that the transhuman age essentially is upon us. We're sort of in the door already. Now we're starting to explore, what does that mean? And so, it's kind of like environmentalism. You don't always necessarily say, it's the environment anymore. You just understand that recycling or taking care of the planet or not trashing nature is what you do. And so I think transhumanism is that same thing. Where is the next level of achievement, of prosperity, of living better and longer lives? And so extreme longevity is becoming like the most natural thing. You talk about it in terms of this is what you do. In fact, most people, when they talk about extreme longevity, are just talking about in terms of business and commerce and capitalism, which is wonderful, because before it used to be, is it possible to conquer death? And now it's like, forget whether it's possible. Where do we put our money to start trying? And that's a great new beginning. That's something that's new in the last 2 years in the entire movement.
Yes, thank you for that response. And I think Josh agrees with you. He says the ideas and values, applicational and philosophical, of transhumanism have exploded, even though the term, I think, needs a lot more circulation. And that's what we're trying to achieve in the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Josh also says he agrees that life extension is definitely mainstream. And I want to highlight another comment from Daniel Tweed, who was our 2024 vice presidential candidate. He would love to see you on any debate stage, Zoltan. And I think I would echo that sentiment. I really appreciated you coming to Chicago in March of 2020 to participate in the debate of 18 presidential candidates from 8 different political parties. I think you made great points in that debate when you challenged Donald Trump for the Republican nomination. And I am also curious, since 2020, we've had a change in the U.S. Transhumanist Party constitution. Prior to that time, we were only able to endorse candidates who either ran as independent or explicitly ran under the Transhumanist Party banner. Since that time, we've expanded our candidate eligibility criteria for endorsement. So hypothetically, we could endorse somebody running as a Democrat or a Republican or a Libertarian or a Green if that person either explicitly advocates for life extension or transhumanism in their campaign, or if they're willing to openly publicize their endorsement by the Transhumanist Party. And right now, the question that I would have for you is, hypothetically, would you be open to such an endorsement with essentially that kind of understanding? And it seems like you would be speaking about these subjects to some significant extent. Your rhetoric may vary, but you would be touching on the main themes. So if we were to hold a vote on the question of endorsing your candidacy, and I have no guarantees about how that vote would turn out, by the way, but would you be open to the prospect of that happening?
Yeah, absolutely. I would welcome the endorsement of the Transhumanist Party naturally, and I pretty much welcome, most any endorsement as long as it's staying within the perceived lanes. But, and just so everyone knows, I'm constantly tagged with founding the Transhumanist Party. As many of you know, recently I spoke at the United Kingdom's Parliament, and in front of me, it had a Transhumanist Party sticker. That was what they put me as. And there's news still following me, basically every week. So of course I welcome that, and I still really enjoy everything the Transhumanist Party is doing and standing for. It's just as I've gotten older, I would like to win. That's, I think, one of the things. And as I've turned 50 recently, I have to be realistic that if you're not part of the Democrats or the Republicans, for better or worse, you are not going to win a serious election. And that's been a very tough thing to swallow. But, one tries to be realistic. But I absolutely support third parties. I absolutely support the Transhumanist Party, what it's doing. I follow it closely. And as you know, I'm an advisor on it. So, of course, I'd welcome an endorsement. And I hope, the Transhumanist Party continues to grow and make its influence. In fact, to me, nothing is even more important than having third parties influence right now, because I feel like the two parties have become such kind of monsters at each other. More than ever, we need a little bit of the outside power to try to influence them. One of the reasons I'm running is because I feel the Democrats have done a absolutely horrible job. You saw it in the national elections last year. Trump won by a large margin, and many people think, well, how could Trump win? He comes across as somebody who, you would think shouldn't be president for many reasons. And the problem is that the Democrats have been acting worse. I say this honestly and openly. People are saying Trump's fascist. Well, I live in a fascist state. If you're a real estate developer, as I am, and you try to build buildings, it's almost impossible to do so in California. So when they talk about fascism, when they talk about regulations that make it so that people can't even run their businesses, I am a direct victim of that. I have seen my business do nothing in 5 years. And Gavin Newsom, for 8 years, has made this state worse and worse and worse. So don't in any way think that I'm your traditional Democrat. I am somebody who wants to completely reform the Democrat Party and make it into something that maybe what it used to be, an old school thing that had liberal values, a centrist kind of position. Somehow it's become identity politics. You're taking orders from the 1% and you're fighting all these incredible things. And the majority of the citizens in California are stuck like me. They can't grow businesses. Inequality is growing dramatically. People are poorer than they've ever been. And yes, maybe the state itself is doing good, but that has in terms of monetary things, but that has really just to do with a couple valuations of major AI companies. Has nothing to do with the 40 million residents here who are looking around saying, my God, inflation's out of control. I can't afford housing. There's water issues all over. There's wildfires all over. There's riots all over LA. I mean, people are celebrating, throwing their arms up against Trump. What about actually celebrating having a normal society just operate like a normal way? And again, I'm not saying I'm not against Trump. I was in the No Kings protest yesterday, but there's something far deeper than the Democrat and the Republicans fighting each other. It's what is actually valuable for the citizenry, what is valuable for the greater good of the people. And that's really what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to reform a lot of the democratic views that are out there to make them just basically more centrist and liberal to what they were, so that we can actually move forward and everyone can have a more prosperous life. I haven't seen much prosperity for many Democrats or Republicans for a long time.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for that response. And as Art Ramon writes in the comments, we're going to have to assimilate the Democratic Party, because clearly the orthodoxy of the Democratic Party is not in accord with transhumanist values or even the values of somebody who just wants reasonable human progress. Of course, the Transhumanist Party is very much a pro-development, pro-building party, and we have noticed how difficult it is to construct new housing in California. Actually, you mentioned driverless cars. I took some rides in Waymo autonomous vehicles when I visited Los Angeles. Fortunately, I was there just a few days before the riots ignited, and there was this disgraceful spree of destruction aimed against the Waymo vehicles. But I experienced those vehicles firsthand, and I think it's wonderful technology. I would trust it over the vast majority of human drivers. But driving through some of the, let's call them suburbs of Los Angeles, I saw this stark contrast between the high-tech futuristic environment in which I was sitting and experiencing the technology and just some of the destitution that I saw, the homelessness, the dilapidated infrastructure. So you have your work cut out for you in terms of persuading the Democrats to pursue a different course. And if you do happen to win as governor, to turn that situation around. But that's definitely aligned with a tech-friendly and techno-optimistic vision, because I do think we can build our way out of this crisis. So reading through your platform on the campaign website, I think there is a lot of alignment between the policies that you propose and the U.S. Transhumanist Party's platform and values. But there is one issue where there is a rather significant divergence, and that's in regard to perhaps not even some of your specific recommendations on AI, but the general tone of your campaign rhetoric. So you, of course, raise quite an alarm about AI and automation creating massive job displacement and other issues as well. Now, the USTP in its platform does take a much more positive view of AI. Section 120 of the USTP platform was adopted in just March of this year. And while it does recognize some potential pitfalls and concerns to look out for, like the potential for algorithmic bias and unfair discrimination, we do state that the United States Transhumanist Party supports approaching technologies of artificial intelligence primarily as opportunities rather than as threats. And when we delve more deeply into your specific policy proposals like UBI or enabling each household to have a robot that can do the chores, there is, in fact, much that would resonate with a more techno-optimistic view and be consistent with the USTP platform. But that initial rhetorical angle is very different. And what I'm wondering is, why did you apparently choose to start with a message of fear rather than one of hope and opportunity, especially given that there is so much AI-related fear and even what I would consider AI doomerism, the thinking of someone like Eliezer Yudkowsky, who thinks it's inevitable, basically, that AI will wipe us out this decade, which I clearly don't agree with, and nor does the USTP. And you seem to have a more nuanced stance, but why do you start with essentially rhetoric of countering AI or the threat of AI rather than what AI could help us to do and to build?
Sure. Well, let me just start by saying that whatever you read in major media is absolutely not reliable whatsoever. So let me take you back to a keynote that I gave at Florida Atlantic University, where I met a ton of AI people, engineers and whatnot. And that's really where my downward spiral began. First off, I know you guys I've been following you online. I know nobody thinks AGI is here. I can tell you from talking with engineers, AGI is being worked on in laboratories 20 miles away from me right now. In the exact same way that people are test driving the 2027 X5 BMWs, they are working on AGI right now, meaning that AGI already exists. It's just not something you can be released because of all the problems it causes. Now, then I've talked to a bunch of other events, talked to Ben Goertzel, I've debated him publicly at the Firehouse in San Francisco. And then last weekend, I think it was last Sunday, I went to Max Novastern's house. Now, Max Novastern is one of the partners of Sam Altman. Sam Altman, of course, is in charge of ChatGPT. And, and there was 100 AI engineers there. Not one person disagreed with the actual statement that I'm saying now, that we are already working on AGI. Now, so just so you understand, like the way the car market works, 2026 BMWs or Audis, whatever car, they're already in the production line right now. They're being made. They've already been test driven and all the kinks are working out. They're selling the 2025s, but that was like developed 2 years back. So they're actually working on 2027s, test driving them around tracks, looking at them, looking at the kinks. We are already working on an AI that's as smart as us, which means in 24 months, we'll be working on AIs that are probably super intelligent or getting close to that point, and it's game over. That's actually why I bought a 2001 Jeep literally about 3 months ago, because I am worried that any moment the cars can stop on the freeways today. It's no longer, oh, this can happen in 6 months. In fact, I have two friends who have literally left the country recently to go build bunkers, one in Thailand and one I can't even say where. People that are on the ground, that are working at Google, at OpenAI, and these places are actually taking major precautions today because they already know what's happening. And so when I want to tell you again that I know I've been reading that nobody thinks AGI is coming that soon. It's not whether it's coming. I've talked to engineers. It's here. It's really just a matter of these things can't be released for capitalistic reasons, for PR reasons, for being politically correct. So I am absolutely warning people. I am absolutely trying to tell people that when Zoltan buys a Jeep, a 2001 Jeep, that the AI can't control, just in case the AI accidentally sets off, shuts down the internet or shuts down the water. And again, this AI may not do it purposely. It may be like the paperclip theory. You might have a benign AI that does all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be as smart as us to destroy humanity. It doesn't even have to be nice or evil. It can do it for a variety of reasons. But the people, the engineers that I'm talking to, that person, 100-person party at Max Novastern's house, recently that Wired magazine covered, there was nobody had an idea on how to create an alignment that could be positive for the human race. The only thing you could actually try to do is what Dan Faggella was actually doing, which was try to create a worthy successor, meaning something that's actually useful in terms of an evolutionary purpose beyond humanity, because there is a good chance that we will be completely wiped out, or we're just going to be, sent to things. In fact, a lot of us at that party were saying it would be wiser to have a nuclear war right now to stop progress for human civilization from a game theory perspective, because at least in an all-out nuclear war, pockets of human beings would survive. Whereas if you get to superintelligence and it decides it doesn't like human beings, it could easily wipe out every single last human being in its superintelligence. So we're at the biggest crux in the crossroads that I've ever seen of humanity. I have no idea what to do. I have two young daughters. Do they go to college? That's a joke to me at this point. Do they go to college? I mean, it's almost impossible to talk about longevity and transhumanism and even my campaign anymore without warning people that we are suffering an amazing time with AI. We can't really stop developing it because then the Chinese will develop, and then that's even worse because then we have a Chinese super intelligent AI that destroys us. So we're stuck in this incredibly weird drowning tide pool where I think it's like a whirlpool where we're kind of wondering what to do. But I can tell you this party I went to last Sunday at this billionaire's house, $30 million mansion overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge on the cliffs. Nobody, and there are hundreds of experts, AI people. You all know them. They're all the time in the magazines and stuff. No one had an answer. It was just like we're on the Titanic.
Interesting. Well, thank you for that response and for giving us some inside information about attitudes. I am deeply alarmed by an attitude that does seem to be increasingly prevalent in elite circles, that nuclear war is less of a risk than AI or artificial superintelligence. I think quite the opposite. Nuclear war is not only the greatest existential risk today, but it is the greatest existential risk that the human species will ever face. And in fact, we are living through the most dangerous time in all history today because of the geopolitical conflicts that threaten to erupt in nuclear war. And if we can find any sort of technological or moral or diplomatic solution to those conflicts, then we will never be at this much risk as a species again. But I do think the difference also is in terms of the timeframes for AGI or artificial superintelligence. So I clearly think those are possible. And I think Ray Kurzweil's timeframes for an artificial superintelligence by 2045 are fairly realistic. But in terms of what is AGI, my general impression, based on how large language models work, is that there is exactly zero probability that a large language model could become a true artificial general intelligence, in the sense of being able to cross multiple domains, like a self-driving car learning how to play chess, for example. And you and I were on a Freedom Fest panel in Las Vegas in 2017. One of the other panelists was quite an erudite scientist who was one of the people who coined the term AGI in conjunction with Ben Goertzel, Peter Voss. And we had a virtual enlightenment salon with Peter Voss on August 4th of 2024, in which he explained essentially there is no way, in his view, that the current trajectory of popular AI models, the large language models, the generative AIs, could lead to AGI. We would need a different technology, a different paradigm. And I do happen to agree with him. I know there are others who don't, but I just wanted to illustrate essentially the contrast in viewpoints there. But that's for our members to consider. I do also want to ask you, since this has been a subject of great interest among our members, what are some of your views on issues like making housing more affordable, and also in an era of increasing automation where it's possible that some people may lose their jobs? You've been an advocate of universal basic income, but you stated that your views on this have evolved. So we have in the U.S. Transhumanist Party the concept of the federal land dividend, which you essentially originated, and we have adopted it as part of our platform. The idea is to lease out unused federal land, with the exception of national parks and national monuments, and allow private corporations to utilize it but pay rent to the federal government, which then gets used as a basic income. But you've stated more recently that your views have broadened, that you would be open to a wider range of basic income options or approaches. So if you could talk about that, as well as, since you mentioned Andrew Yang, the Civic Party Coalition is interested in whether you'd be willing to align with Andrew Yang's Forward Party on issues like UBI and also ranked choice voting, which the Transhumanist Party, of course, supports.
Well, first of all, I support ranked choice voting, and I always have, and I think that makes a lot of sense because it does even it out. And whether I would be willing to, cozy up with the Forward Party, we'll see. Right now, it's just like, again, for practical reasons, we're trying to actually win or make a difference and be a top candidate. So we're just kind of sticking with whatever the existing game is anymore. I've been independent or, trying to do alternative things for a long time. But let me just say, first off, there's a lot of different ways that UBI can work. And I think beyond UBI now is what's happening is the threat of AI and the reality of AI happening. This is something that's brand new in the last 2-3 years, is moving me to the left. I think anytime there's actually a giant war or world war, a lot of people move closer, not necessarily to the left, but they expect the government to be more a part of their lives and helping to come up with a solution. And I think AI is going to be moving everybody that direction as we come to this realization that, of course, workers are going to lose their jobs. I feel the majority of workers will probably lose their jobs in the next 5 to 10 years, and certainly could be a lot sooner, because if you look at the factory imprints that are being built right now in China and the United States, I mean, there are millions of humanoid robots being planned to come out by next year sometime, and already some will start hitting the market this year. If by 2027, it could be tens of millions, maybe billions. I mean, it's hard to know exactly how much they can produce, but clearly if they can produce 500 million humanoid robots that are using these types of generative AIs that I've been speaking of, that are being worked in laboratories right now, ones that are as smart as us and soon probably smarter, and they're as agile as Olympians, which they soon will be if you've been watching, how these robotic videos are going. There's really nothing that humans can do better and or be smarter. So we're going to be completely obsolete in terms of working. So it would be up to the government to step in or maybe the kindness of CEOs to say, okay, let's keep the humans around but that's probably not going to happen in terms of government or kindness of CEOs. Probably what's going to happen is government's going to say, we're entering a new age. And so this is, the biggest platform. I just released it today. If everyone wants to go check it out, we have something called the automated abundance economy. And that's the biggest kind of policy change, I think, that I have had out in a lot of years. And while it's not a giant change, it just coalesces kind of a lot of different ideas together, including what you mentioned earlier, one household, one robot. A lot of us spend a lot of time doing chores, cleaning, mowing your lawn, laundry. That takes about 10 hours a week. If you can have a robot in every household that does that, let's say by the end of next year or within the next 3 or 4 years, everybody will have a lot more time. But it's just not just, working. The automated abundance economy is really focusing on automating everything so that we kind of get to this much more luxurious existence. But I want to be very clear that automated abundance economy, my version of it, is very different than the automated luxury communism, which is the other kind of angle of this type of automated world. Automated abundance economy, what I'm supporting, would still support capitalism, still support investments. It would just mean that there'd be some people that get really rich off these automations, but everyone else has sort of a basic income, has automation that takes care of their lives, housing, medicine, healthcare, things like that. You would have basically everything covered. So if you wanted to work, you could. If you wanted to make money, you could. So I still think, our automated abundance economy incorporates capitalism, but promises that there'll be dividends from a universal basic income. Now, the universal basic income, as this question started, could be based on my federal land dividend. I would love that. But I'm no longer so stringent about this. If we need to raise taxes, we can do so. If we need to deal with crypto in a way that incorporates it, let's do that. If we need to, give dividends from the companies, like Bill Gates is saying, tax the AI companies, tax the robot companies to pay the universal basic income. If it's something like that, I would support it. At this point, as someone running for office, I'm not concerned with how we take care of people that lose their jobs to automation. I'm concerned that we do so as a top priority. Now, that doesn't mean I want to sink the capitalistic economy. There's got to be a better way than just, it's one or the other. But I think it's a necessity because you're going to have millions of people losing their jobs here in the next few years. They're going to raise up their pitchforks and they will turn the world upside down. They will riot and demonstrate, and you're seeing all the chaos already. If you think this is chaotic, this is nothing compared to what happens when millions of people actually lose their jobs. And when they lose their jobs, they're going to lose them forever. There's no retraining or this or that. So we need to make sure that people change their viewpoint on what it means to be a working citizen. So part of the other thing, the kind of third component of the automated abundance economy, is that you don't value your perception of yourself just by what kind of work you do. You value it just because you're a human being, but maybe you're creative, maybe you're an artist. Either way, you have a basic income that takes care of things. Hopefully you have a robot in your household that makes your chores and your lives easier. So you have much more of a life of leisure than you've ever had before. What are you going to do with that? Well, it's not for me to say what people will do with that. But the automated abundance economy incorporates a lot of these ideas into a world where people have a lot more free time to do the things exactly that they want. They may not be as rich. The American dream and capitalism, some of those things may not work for them anymore. But they'll have a lot of freedom to develop themselves, community, church, if that's what they like, whatever it is that people want to do. They can go down that road and follow it to their passion. And so that's really what the automated abundance economy is. But I just, to finally answer your question, for me, it's no longer about how we pay for a basic income. It's that we're coming to the goal line. We're coming to the end of the game. We need to establish it now regardless.
Yes, thank you for your response. And as a follow-up to that, Josh Universe wonders, do you have any position on UBC or universal basic compute? So the idea would be to give a certain amount of computing resources to everybody, especially in the age of AI, so people can have their own AI agents, so that AI isn't just something that's applied to them by large corporations, but they can have the ability to deploy it themselves.
Well, it's an interesting idea, and I think something like that would come out, but it's kind of like the word transhumanism. I think universal basic income is established enough. Also, the idea of one household, one robot, this is going to work, but we have to be careful about too many weird things because these are major parties, the Democrats and Republicans. And as you know, from when I ran as a Republican, they're very difficult to actually get into and change. And maybe I got sixth in the primaries in the U.S. presidential race against Trump for the Republicans. But whether I made much of an impact, that's a bigger question. The question really is we need to stick with some basics. My campaign's trying to be very basic. Universal basic income. Let's give everyone a robot so they work less. And let's also take care of the basics. Crime is increasing in California. We have riots and things like that, or just, people breaking into Apple stores and taking phones by the dozens. I mean, we have to get stuff like that under control. We have this giant train project, super train, fast train that's costing hundreds of billions of dollars, going nowhere. Stop that stuff. Stop it now. We need housing for people. We need to deregulate the environment. And this has nothing to do with Republicans or Democrats. Just deregulate things so people can actually build houses and have a place to live. Otherwise, they're all just going to leave the state. We have wildfire issues. At least there, technology, AI, spotting from satellites and stuff can really help out. But the point of the story is it's just too complex, I think. And I think one of the things is a lot of my campaigns in the past have been sort of science fiction based. But I'm really trying to keep this one down to the ground. Listen, let's get a robot in every household over the next 5 years, and let's try to get you a basic income. That basic income might, in the beginning, not be enough to feed you fully or to house you fully. But if I can get $250 in your pocket, if I can get $500 in your pocket every month, I'm going to do that. And this is a start, because I assure you, just watch. You're already seeing Microsoft and Google, all these mass layoffs happening. They may say, the business environment changed. This is bullshit. AI is starting to completely take over the market and the industries across the United States and the world. And very quickly, those who don't have the most developed skill set are going to be replaced. And even those with a developed skill set are going to be replaced in the next 24, 36 months, unless somehow government steps in with some kind of program.
Yes, thank you for that response. And I do think there are some differences among our members as to the time frame for automation creating net displacement of jobs, though I do think in the near term there could be some turnover in jobs as some prior occupations are made obsolete. But it's also possible that AI could create new jobs, people who work with AIs, people who are prompt engineers, and other areas of work and indeed meaning that leads to capitalistic exchanges that are created by AI. But with all of that aside, we have some interesting feedback. Rudy Hoffman says he's glad that you're not virulently anti-capitalist, and indeed neither is the USTP. The USTP has never been an anti-capitalist party. And then we also have Art Ramon's comment, can my house cleaning robot manage my portfolio and make me rich? To which I respond, in that case, the house cleaning robot might actually be an AGI because it could jump across domains. And Josh points out what you're referring to is often called the meaning economy, where people no longer associate their identities with specific jobs they do. They find a broader sense of meaning in their lives. And I think that's very important for people to re-envision themselves as whole individuals and not some particular task that they do for a corporation. Mike Lazine writes, the Republicans and Democrats are stuck in a box and they have a hard time breaking out of it. It seems your strategy is to kind of enter the Democratic box and try to push it out, or push the Democrats out of the box. And I hope you can succeed with that, at least to a significant extent. Now, given that we have about 20 minutes for your appearance, I would like to ask the other panelists if they have specific questions for Zoltan. Who would like to begin? Let's see. Art Ramon, David, or Bill, any questions that you have based on what you've heard so far? David, please go ahead. And then Art Ramon. Let's see. David, I think we need to unmute you there.
Fantastic. Zoltan, I wondered if you've any more insights from that meeting that Dan Fagella organized recently, which you attended, because I wish I was there, and it's one of the times I regret not being close to Silicon Valley, but it did seem there was a lot of innovative, creative thinking, even though there were no solutions that could be widely accepted.
Yeah. Well, the Wired first off, David, nice to see you again. Wired did a pretty fun write-up. It wasn't as spicy as my write-up would have been, but let me just say, first off, this was a crazy, crazy thing. I wish it had been live streamed to the whole world. So first off, they invited kind of top AI engineers and experts and writers to this, this Max Novosnerd's house. He had just closed escrow. It was a $30 million house, must be like 10,000 square feet, literally on the cliff. And, they had all the servers. It was like Great Gatsby type of party, and some people were dressed like me, very formally, because I am campaigning governor. Other people were in like shorts and torn shirts and just, it was bizarre, the kind of mix of people. And there were a couple speakers, and it was really about the name of the symposium is called Worthy Successor. And it was the idea that it's probably too late to align AI. Therefore, we need to start worrying about how to create a worthy successor for the human race, as opposed to worrying so much about whether AI can align with the human race. And that's a very different concept than, let's say, will AI help us? It's no longer will AI help us. It's more, what can we do to help AI carry on whatever it means to be alive in the universe, just in case humans don't make it or something of that nature. And so you can see the dystopian angle to it, and yet you can also say, wow, that's a very forward-thinking idea. And not everyone necessarily supports that we won't be able to align, but I can tell you all three speakers realize from a game theory perspective, the implausibility of getting a super intelligence to consider our own perspectives once it's a super intelligence. And because that's just simply, why would God listen to, why would we listen to an ant or a dog, let's just say, of something of comparison, if we could? And I think that party just illustrated to me something that I'd already written my Newsweek op-ed, which if anyone hasn't read, it's about Ben Goertzel and I debating in public about whether we owe evolution a right. We owe something to evolution to give a worthy successor to the human species, just in case humans don't make it. And of course, that's kind of where I come down and say, it's time 100% to stop the development of AI, period, whatever it takes. And and that's game theory. A lot of other academics are starting to support that. If you see World War III break out, Iran and Israel, none of us see it anymore as this has something to do with Zionism or whatever. This now has to do with end of the world AI tactics and game theory. And while that may sound like a conspiracy theory, I assure you nobody can look, this is some of the things that came out of my work at Oxford. Nobody can anymore examine these truths and these ideas we're seeing and say, wait a sec, we're just going to have to go down with the Titanic. There must be a way to stop this situation. And I do not like the outcomes. I do not like any part of this. What a terrible time in history, actually, to be born, and yet what a glorious time in terms of how exciting it is. But I am now very fearful for my daughter. So anyways, David, just to answer your question, that gives you a little bit more perspective on, and what I'm talking about now is I'm talking about a lot of the conversation that happened at the party that has been on people's minds, and nothing positive came out of that party, except we all had a lot of good drinks.
Just one quick follow-up. We transhumanists used to say the successor to humans will be transhumanists or even posthumanists. In other words, we will be evolving sort of in parallel with the technology. And so, yeah, it's foolish to think that we humans will continue in this current broadly similar state, except a little bit smarter perhaps. So was the discussion of these transhumanist possibilities? After all, some people are saying, talked to Nate Suarez recently, he's the executive director, or rather the president of MIRI, the Machine Intelligence Research Institute. He says he wants the progress with AI to stop long enough so that we humans can get a heck of a lot smarter first, and then we can start AI getting smarter again from a transhumanist point of view, rather than from a narrow human limited perspective.
Yes. Listen, that would be brilliant. The thing that I would suggest is, I was always optimistic about AI because I thought we were going to go hand in hand. Super AI, intelligent AI was going to launch, but we would have our brain implants in and we would be one with it, merged with it. That was my brilliant transhuman future. That way, it's not like AI is going off separately, but what's happened is the AI field has developed so incredibly quickly, and the Neuralink or brain implant or brain, uploading our consciousness has developed or not slowly, but just not nearly as quickly. So these two fields that were going up like this are now like this. And we need to slow down AGI development and superintelligent AI development until we can catch up and we can be one and the same as that superintelligent going forward. Because what's going to happen is the singularity is going to leave us completely behind and may destroy us in the meantime. So, that's the sad state of things. The problem, though, of course, as we mentioned earlier, there's geopolitical concerns. How can we get every AI engineer on the planet to actually stop developing it without having some kind of authoritarian control over them? And the answer is no one has come up with a solution at this point, except to having a global dictatorship that absolutely puts their foot down on everyone's throat who's trying to develop AI. But even then, you'd still have black market people who might try to develop an AGI or a super AI. So right now, it seems impossible to even know what to do, both from a strategic perspective. Right now, it seems like we're stuck on the Titanic with no way to avoid that iceberg. But I do agree. If we could stop the development of AI for a few years and let it catch up so we could upload our brains and things like this and actually embrace this transhuman future that all of us had dreamed about, that would be the best way forward. But unfortunately, that's just not how the cards have played out so far.
Interesting. Thank you for your responses. And Josh Universe writes, there is no stopping the development of AI. John H. writes, AI development will not be stopped, just like the development of weapons tech never stopped. So it seems that there ought to be some different solution to the concerns that are raised. Of course, Ray Kurzweil's view is indeed a view that David has articulated, that there would be some sort of transhuman merger between humans and AI. And you also articulated that view earlier on in your activism. And it is interesting to think about, for the viewers of this salon, what led you to essentially embrace this view that AI is racing so fast ahead that this merger might be derailed unless that pace of progress is slowed. Now, in the interests of time, I want to pose a brief question from our legislative director, Jason Geringer, and then let's go to Art Ramon, and after that to Bill Andrews. I do think this is a brief question, especially given your appearance at the No Kings rally yesterday. Jason wonders, Zoltan, are you going to have the courage to stand up to Donald Trump if you're elected governor of California, or in your future political career if you challenge his successor for the presidency?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I ran against Trump before, and I will absolutely, especially when it comes to something like the No Kings rally. This is a no-brainer. I mean, this isn't even really about Trump. This is just about democracy. If you support democracy, then you don't want raids coming out of nowhere pulling people off the street. You have to have some semblance of law and order and humanity in order to stop this stuff. So that's really where I come down on these things. And don't get me wrong, I'm not like some ultra progressive leftist, not at all. I'm like right in the middle. I mean, Republican, Democrats, doesn't make a difference to me. It just happens to be that I believe in a few core issues. And the one thing I don't believe in, having been a war zone correspondent, is when you get raids taking people, separating families out of their homes, and who knows where they end up. I mean, this is something that cannot be tolerated. It's obviously it gets complicated if they're criminals and this and that, but we can't have even really one mistake of an innocent person being taken off the streets by people in masks and law enforcement. That's when you cross the line to dictatorship. So I absolutely am against those things. And that's why I was at that rally. I think Trump, it sounds like Trump may have actually stopped some of those things after seeing some of the rallies just in the last 24 hours. But let's just hope we can get back to a country that doesn't do that, because I completely oppose that.
Yes, thank you for your response. And Rudy Hoffman likes your emphasis on due process. He thinks that is good, generally centrist verbiage. And a lot of people, not just from the far left, have been quite concerned about the Trump administration's recent actions and essentially unilateral impositions of its will, contrary to the checks and balances that are inherent to the American system of government. So thank you for that response. And now let us go on to Art Ramon and his question.
The the subject of disclosure, you have these whistleblowers say that there's, non-human intelligence out there. They're here. They're interfering with our weapon systems because they don't want us to nuke each other. And they're here at a time when AI or AGI is about to be born. And supposedly, even some people say it's already there. The government secret controls an AGI that can practically see into the future. So, what are your thoughts on, the money that's been funded into these black projects, possible, development of advanced craft, breakaway civilization? Any thoughts on that?
So I mean, there's been a ton of money put into all sorts of things, and I think we have to, well, first off, let me just say that I am part of what's happened in the last few years. Let me just real quickly give you an anecdote about Oxford, which I just finished my graduate degree there. So, Nick Bostrom was one of my professors, as was a number of others. And we had our AI module, and literally 11 days after spending 20 classes on AI, ChatGPT was born, and none of our professors there spoke about this generative AI being even nearly imminent or nearly about to happen. And here was 11 days after I finished my last class there, that last AI class, that ChatGPT came out. And I caution this as well as we talk about Kurzweil, Peter Voss, other people, even Ben Goertzel, my friends. I mean, they're all my friends, to be honest. I caution people to understand that a lot of people that have said stuff, including myself, in the past, and a lot of people that put money into these things, the field is changing so quickly. Oxford, the professors that are the world's expert, did not know that ChatGPT was about to be born and change the entire reason we're giving these classes in the first place. They didn't realize how fast and forward AI was. I think now, as we're having this conversation, the same thing. I don't think Kurzweil has his finger anymore on the proper, on the tip of where AI is. He is not there in those laboratories, on 15 floors underneath at the Google building, working on this AI with the kill switch, being able to do it. Only a handful of engineers and a handful of CEOs are in control of everything at this moment. And don't be surprised if very soon here, we have the military take over some of these operations. I'm sure they're already there. I mean, this is already so far advanced, I think, from what a lot of people know. So when we talk about the money putting into it, it's very difficult to know whether it's good, whether it's useful, whether it should continue. It's capitalism, but capitalism, I feel, largely speaking, and I don't want to be an anti-capitalist, but capitalism has been great to get us to this point. But the point moving forward in an age of superintelligence is not going to need capitalism moving forward. It's actually going to need something a little bit more cohesive to humanity surviving and thriving, maybe something more like the Star Trek era. And I know that sounds like I'm switching to being a socialist or something. I'm not. It just happens to be that I'm switching with the set of circumstances that are happening to planet Earth, to my wife, my daughters, to you guys. And I think maybe now we're looking at needing new structures that can get us to the next era safely without having a superintelligence that may or may not like us. And just guys know, I just have a few minutes left. Sorry, I have people coming to my house, but I would love to answer the few more questions. I know Bill is still there.
Yes. Let's get a question from Bill, and then we have one more question from Jason Mallory, who has thought a bit about these issues, and then we'll let you go, Zoltan. So, Bill, go ahead and ask your question. Oh, let's unmute Bill. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, just a really short. In a few minutes, I'm going to be speaking about the Rally for Longevity Rights. I'm just wondering if you would possibly be available to be a speaker for that. It's in the Lincoln Memorial in September of 2026.
Yes, I would love to. I'm trying to speak at everything I can now, Bill. So, in fact, I was invited to speak at the Longevity Forum in Marseille in southern France, the 2060 Longevity Forum. So I'm excited to do that. So please feel free to email me. We're trying to do as much as possible. And longevity is still a huge part of my platform. It just happens that in the gubernatorial race, I'm trying not to scare people away. You all know that I have been a little bit outspoken and I have scared people and talked some wild things. I am actually making a real run to try to maybe end up in the top 5 where I can really make a dent in the conversation. But longevity is still my heart and soul, especially as I get older. And believe me, I run shorter distances. I'm just not as active. Sleeping's more challenging, things like that. So I'm just as involved as ever in trying to push forward to longevity. And I'm actually very hopeful that maybe if AI could end up being benign, it's something that would just radically transform the field for us moving forward. The bigger question, though, is can we keep it benign? But if we could keep it benign, we could guarantee it. Wow, we would probably be there in 10 years if we could use some of these new technologies that are going to come out. I think so anything like that, please invite me. Please feel free to just email me, and I'll be happy to talk it over.
Excellent. Thank you for that response, Zoltan. And we will hear more from Bill soon about the Rally for Longevity Rights. Meanwhile, our last question for you comes from our friend Jason Mallory, who is also a congressional candidate in California. So Jason wrote a science fiction book called Proxy: When Robots Work Better. And this book was released, I think, about 13 years ago. So he had this concept of a civil right enabling citizens the ability to vote on the use of AI or automation, as well as to utilize their share of it and receive a funded UBI from the robot income tax from the proceeds of the robots replacing humans with automation. Have you come across this policy or others to adapt our free world economies to AI? So Jason has this approach for funding a UBI through essentially a tax on robots and automation. And we had a virtual enlightenment salon with him previously on this in 2022. What are your thoughts on this idea?
Yeah, no, something like that 100% could work. And, it's quite similar to Bill Gates' idea, just tax the robots that are taking jobs. So I would say, if a robot you can prove a robot specifically has taxed your job, then we need to ask the company that did it, what are you going to give to the human being who's gone forever? Now, again, this is not saying that it would be like we're going to force it, but this is, if all of a sudden a robotics company ends up worth trillions of dollars and just ends up firing all its employees, clearly that's not going to work, because what's going to happen is everyone's going to raise their pitchforks and then go after these CEOs and go after these companies. So we need a system that works, and government probably has to step in and try to create this kind of system. And so it would be better to do it up front. It would be better to let these companies know up front that something like this is going to happen. So what Jason's suggesting is just one of many different methods. That's a method that I would definitely suggest looking into, having some quick studies done, and approaching the businesses and saying, what do you think about this? We're all in this together. There's no sense of pretending that you're going to have multi-trillion-dollar companies that completely eliminate all the human employees, and nobody's giving anything back. That's not going to lead to a society that is structurally sound. At some point, there's more people with pitchforks that have lost their jobs than a CEO can deal with. So at some point, again, this is what my gubernatorial campaign is really about, is trying to find the avenue down this path peacefully before something bad happens, before people are out of work and they lose access to medicine and they have to give up their house and whatever it is. So I think if we make this transition nice, safe, functional, then all of a sudden we can cross the bridge together and say, yeah, capitalism has survived, but so has the idea that people are taken care of. Again, this is what the automated abundance economy is about, our new policy, which is just we can actually get to a much better world than we have right now with a lot less poverty. The problem, though, is that we're going to have to get big corporations to agree to it up front. And that's the big challenging part. But in general, I like what Jason's saying.
Yes. Thank you very much for that response, Zoltan. And before you go, we'll give you the opportunity to say any final words to our viewers, anything else you want them to know about your campaign or what is coming up.
Sure. Well, first, let me just say, my website, Zoltan Istvan 2026, we could use donations. We have a team of people in place. And when you're trying to play with the big dogs in running, for governor, it's about money. I need money to pay people to do AI-generated videos, design work, to get the paraphernalia out there, all the different bumper stickers. It's crazy how much it is just to try to run a real campaign. In fact, I was just reading about some of the other gubernatorial campaign candidates and how much money they're bringing in. So if any of you feel inclined, please go to Zoltan Istvan 2026 and make a small donation. I also want to say that making small donations is critical because that's one of the measures that they have for getting into the debates. The more donors that you actually have, even if it's just $10, the better you end up doing. So please consider that. And second, we did release today a brand new interview on the automated abundance economy with Team Futurism, which podcast some of you might know. So feel free to listen to that just to find out more about the ideas, what it means to have, for example, a construction robot that will build a house, but it already has the regulations directly built into it. So that way the regulatory process is nowhere near as challenging because it's not like you have to get inspectors out there and things like, there's a whole bunch about the automated abundance economy that can really challenge the way we perceive capitalism and how to move forward in a new world without actually, I guess, sacrificing capitalism, but still getting people taken care of, having their basic needs, shelter, food, healthcare like that taken care of. So I would encourage you all to just kind of take a big look at that to try to see if it's something that appeals to you, because we think it might be a way not only to move the Democrats forward, but also to move the Republicans forward and move the country forward as a way as we enter into kind of the AI age where robots and automation is going to be a huge part of the picture no matter what happens anymore.
Yes, thank you so much, Zoltan. And we will definitely check out the Team Futurism interview that you mentioned. Here is the link. So after the salon, everybody please watch that. I think it will be fascinating to hear more of your thoughts on the automated abundance economy. And thank you so much for joining us today for this hour and for fielding the many challenging questions that we have. Hopefully this will not be the end of our conversation. A lot of our members do want us to hold the endorsement vote. So the vote is going to happen at some time in the near future, probably the next month. And we appreciate you being so candid with your perspectives.
And thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm sorry I had to cut it short, but thank you again. And it's honestly, it's really great to see all your faces and to, have these questions because I've always loved the Transhumanist Party and I love the people there. And we are trying to move forward to a day where we don't have to die and we can get to a better future than we have now.
Yes. Thank you so much, Zoltan. And we certainly share that aim. I hope that you live long and prosper. And your dog, too.
Yeah, my dog's just going crazy right now. Anyways, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. She's been quiet the whole time. All right. Bye, you guys. Thank you.
All right. Farewell
Bye-bye.
to Zoltan. And again, a lot to think about from the points that he has raised. And we hope that we are going to have a lot more discussion in terms of what points he has shared and what we think of them. Now, before we delve more into Zoltan's remarks and feedback from our panelists and our viewers, Bill has some comments about the forthcoming Rally for Longevity Rights that is planned to be held in Washington, D.C. in 2026. So, Bill, please go ahead.
Can I share my screen? I mean, with two PowerPoint slides. Wait, can you hear me? You're muted. You're muted. No.
Yes, you should be able to share your screen. If you click on Present at the bottom panel, then
The present was there, but it disappeared because now it says uploading recordings and you're in the show.
I think that may be something on your end, but see if you can email the slides to me. And in the meantime, please go ahead and explain what you wanted to discuss with regard to the Rally for Longevity Rights, and we'll pull up the slides as soon as we can.
Okay, I'm actually just looking for speakers or people that want to help with it. That's all I wanted to do. I've been giving presentations just most recently last week in Las Vegas, presentations on the subject, and but I don't plan on giving that whole thing. So I'll send you the email, the PowerPoint, but I'm only going to be showing 2 slides. But the present button just reappeared. Okay, I don't know what happened, but okay, so let me just try.
Go ahead and try to share your screen again.
Okay. Let me just.
So Josh wonders, what topics do you need speakers for? This is for the rally itself. So for people to come to Washington, D.C. during the rally and stand out there and discuss the importance of advancing longevity research and helping to catalyze breakthroughs that could help reverse human aging.
I was trying to get this show up. Did anybody see it? Did it work?
No, actually, it would show up, and then I would have the ability to elevate it to the main screen, but I don't see the instance in order to elevate it. Josh wonders when is... Yes.
Should I upload the file?
You can just share it on your screen. So share the window that it's in.
I tried that already, and it didn't, and nobody could see it. So I'm going to hit present again.
Yes.
Slides and PDFs.
If you click on present and share that window that you have. But in the meantime, Josh wonders, when is the Rally for Longevity Rights? I understand it'll be held in the spring of 2026. It has any more specificity?
September 2026.
September now. Okay.
I'm having a hard time thinking about listening to your questions and trying to get this presentation up at the same time. So
right. So maybe while you work at this, I am not seeing it, but if you email me the slides, maybe that would be more efficient.
Let me do that, because I think the reason I can't do it is because I can't concentrate on doing it while being asked questions. So let me just go ahead and email it to you.
So in the meantime, while you do that, David has some remarks about the Oxford AI professors not understanding the changes in AI, which Zoltan mentioned, where essentially just less than 2 weeks after he completed his graduate program, ChatGPT came out and made quite a paradigm shift in the AI landscape. So David, what are your insights about that?
Well, I'm happy to wait for Bill to have his slides up, because
that's going to take some time. That is going to take some time. So why don't you go ahead?
Well, I'll give my general feedback about Zoltan. I was impressed. I thought a lot of what he said was inspiring. A lot of what he said has the ability to get people behind it. The only thing he said which made me raise my eyebrows, and I see that Louis Arroyo in the chat also raised his eyebrows there, is when he thought we might be able to rely on the kindness of CEOs to spread things to large numbers of people. It's true, some CEOs are kind, but far too often they're driven by other forces. So that was the one part where I thought he's a little bit unrealistic, and we need more of rules to ensure that successful businesses don't keep large chunks of their money they've made entirely to themselves, that they are obliged by society as a whole to share parts of it with everybody else, because after all, the profits are dependent on much wider things than just what the CEOs and the companies themselves do. But broadly, I thought it was a great set of ideas. When Zoltan talked about Oxford professors being out of touch, this resonates with my view entirely. I was recently sent slides by another Oxford professor who still insists that we don't need to worry about AI accelerating, because he says modern AI companies have no idea about all the good ideas that Oxford professors and other leaders in AI have had over the decades. On the contrary, in my view, a lot of the people who are at the forefront of these platform companies, they are avidly searching for ideas they can use to combine with their large language models with some of the insights of symbolic reasoning, all the various earlier methods of machine learning. There is a veritable zoo of innovation going on. And the fact that these Oxford professors are ignorant of it bodes badly. But it's not just Oxford professors who were taken by surprise by what ChatGPT and other AIs could do. Actually, the many people inside OpenAI were shocked by how good ChatGPT was. including the board of OpenAI. They were shocked that their management didn't brief them in advance about what ChatGPT would do. And the management's answer to the board was, well, we didn't think it would be that big a thing, frankly. So the reality is that AI is developing emergent features, some good emergent features, some bad emergent features, some ways in which it exceeds our predictions as to what it can do, and some ways in which it makes shockingly terrible judgments, more shockingly bad than people had expected. So in both ways, AI has got emergent features. So Zoltan's entirely right to think that it is possible that we could see whole new levels of caliber of AI within a short period of time. It's not certain, but as Nate Soares said to me, I mentioned him earlier, he's the president of MIRI. He said to me he used to feel confident he could tell people, you probably got about 2 years to sort things out at least. You don't need to worry about superintelligence arriving within 2 years. There are too many things in which current AIs fall behind general intelligence. He says you can no longer feel confident in saying that it is possible indeed that by the end of this year, there will be sufficient breakthroughs that will leave all of us in the dust. So Zoltan's right that this is a matter of urgency, not because we're sure that there's going to be these drastic changes soon, but that is certainly possible. So when I hear Bill Andrews talking about an event in 20th of September 2026, I now wonder, well, is there still going to be a democratic system in place at that far-off date? Or will the world be incredibly different by then? Once upon a time, I'd have thought, well, of course, it's only going to be slightly different between now and 2026. What, that's just a year and 4 months away? No, a year and 3 months away, something like that. But now it's possible there will be these larger changes. So we're in this credible situation where we've got to plan two things in parallel. We've got to plan for a bit of business as usual, hence planning for these conferences a year and 3 or 4 months ahead. But at the same time, we've got to be on alert as never before for early indications of even more drastic changes. And we absolutely cannot trust what so-called self-declared AI experts say is going to happen or not happen, because nobody truly understands the capabilities of these systems. That is the true crisis here. We're developing systems that are operating beyond anybody's understanding.
Yes, thank you for those remarks, David, and hopefully we will delve a bit more deeply into them as well. We do now have some of Bill's slides. He did email me his presentation, so let's start with slide 38 here, the Rally for Longevity Rights.
Okay, well, I'm just right now announcing, I've been giving like 30-minute plus presentations on this, but I'm just going to be showing 2 slides. It's the Rally for Longevity Rights, which now has been approved. And okay, so can you advance the slide for me? Okay, so it has been approved now for the March on Washington for September 2026. Coalition for Radical Life Extension has gotten the okay to go ahead. And the 3 subjects that are going to be part of this thing are best choice medicine. And that's what I've been speaking on mostly. That's just a thing where we are trying to revamp the FDA policies to allow anybody that's suffering from a life-threatening disease that they've been told they have 6 months to live, or a disease that's not worth living, they would be given the okay to try any treatment that they choose, even if it hasn't been tested in animals. This is just going to allow the doctors to proceed with the treatment without having to worry about any liability. And it's pretty much, it's called best choice medicine because at this point, when you're in that kind of condition, the best choice is the patient's choice. It's also going to be discussing classifying aging as a treatable condition. That was classifying aging as a disease. It's been changed to treatable condition. And then also to expedite the approval for longevity therapies. So those are the things. If anybody's interested in helping with that or speaking at the event, let me know and I will work on trying to move that forward. But right now, it's still in its infancy and there's not a lot I can discuss any more than what I just did. So
all right.
That's all I had.
Yes, thank you to Bill. And also, here is a slide from Bill on best choice medicine. Essentially, if the patient is suffering from a life-threatening disease, then best choice medicine allows for the maximum possible scope of options to treat that disease. And there's a website too, bestchoicemedicine.org, for you to study that concept in greater depth. Bill and Liz Parrish have a great white paper on best choice medicine. So please go check it out at bestchoicemedicine.org. And now let us take a look at some more feedback from our viewers regarding Zoltan's remarks. So first, on the subject of the robot tax idea, David Wood writes, there are many problems with the details of any specific robot tax, and he thinks we already have a suitable mechanism, namely a corporation tax set on a sliding scale. Now, I wonder, David, along those lines, do you think it would be practicable to replace all taxes with a corporate income tax or a corporate revenue tax that then could suffice to fund a UBI or other functions of government, in order to both streamline the taxation system as well as address some of the concerns about perhaps automation contributing to job displacement?
I'm not sure about that. I think there probably is still a role for sales tax of various things. So I would have still support for various taxes being set on various items that are perceived as comparative luxuries. People want to buy them, they should be prepared to pay a bit more. And I'm also in favor of Pigouvian taxes. That's taxes on things that have lots of negative externalities. So named after Arthur Pigou, the Cambridge economist from, I think, the 1920s or 1930s, who said, you know, we don't want people to smoke. We should charge more taxation on cigarettes. So I think taxation needs to be a little bit more complicated than just corporation tax. But I think if companies are successful, hugely successful, it doesn't just mean that they're entirely responsible for that success themselves. A lot of their success has been because they've taken advantage of generally educated people who have been educated, people who have learned about science. So that's my advocacy for corporation tax. But I think we need to do more than a UBI. What I liked from what was being said by Zoltan is his sort of a vision of a luxury existence. The drawback of a basic income is it's only a basic income, and it will leave many people feeling left behind. They will feel they've got enough for poor quality accommodation, poor quality education, poor quality health, and that is a recipe for the pitchforks. So rather than talk about a UBI, various people, including myself, will talk about a UGI, a universal generous income, or a ULI, a universal luxury income. And that may seem absurd, but Zoltan's entirely right. It can be enabled by using automation to drive down the costs. So we could have much cheaper accommodation if we have the kinds of robot building systems that Zoltan was talking about. And we can have much cheaper healthcare by the kinds of things that Bill Andrews is talking about now, and we should probably discuss that more, rather than waiting until people have got acute diseases, chronic diseases, which have been developed to a terrible state, which requires a great deal of healthcare. It's far better if we can address things earlier in the development of damage, and that will be much less costly. So with the right approach, we can deliver good healthcare for a fraction of the cost than often occurs today. It's the same with education. These virtual enlightenment salons, of course, are completely free. And I see that Harvard is making more of its courses completely free. And with AI helping, it'll be the case that more and more people who want to find out the answer to something, they'll be able to interrogate their favorite free or almost free AI agent. So that's the focus we should be on. It's not how are we going to do the redistribution, it's how can we build the abundance in the first place. Not just build the abundance, but invent the abundance. How do we get more people studying the mechanisms of aging and fixing it? And so, Bill, I'd be interested to hear, what is the pushback that you're receiving, if anything, from what you're advocating? Are people generally saying, yeah, this is a good idea, let's get behind it? Or do they have any legitimate reservations in your mind that they're raising? Well, this might enable too many cowboys to advocate false solutions and they scam people into paying their life savings for treatments that aren't actually that good.
Well, we haven't had any pushback that we haven't already thought of, okay? So we've already addressed those things. And if I showed my entire presentation, and maybe Gennady, maybe that's a session for a future Enlightenment Salon. I could show the entire presentation and see how we have addressed practically every issue that anybody could have. I've only had standing ovations when I've given this presentation. So there's been no, and even afterwards, no negative feedback.
Yes, absolutely. Let's do it. We have some openings for our virtual Enlightenment Salon schedule in August, and I would be happy to have you present on one of the Sundays of that month, because Best Choice Medicine would be an excellent subject to devote a salon to all on its own. In terms of David's comments about needing more than just a universal basic income, Luis Arroyo agrees with that. And to use another expression of David's, if we do achieve sustainable superabundance, then it would be possible for every individual human to receive much more than a basic standard of living. So please, everyone, check out David's book, Sustainable Superabundance. And for those of you who want to listen to our salon with Jason Mallory from October 16th, 2022, on his ideas of essentially attacks on automation that would fund a UBI, please go to the link shown on the screen. And we did explore that idea in depth, including some challenges, some skeptical remarks and analyses that were offered. So it's clearly an ongoing and multifaceted discussion. Now, there is a comment from one of our viewers that I want to highlight because I think it's quite insightful. Joseph Wolfson writes, could we all be overly projecting humanity's flaws, including genocidal tendencies, onto AI? Could such fear-mongering become a self-fulfilling prophecy? And I have had many thoughts along the same lines, essentially looking at the outputs of some of the large language models and how some reporters have written articles saying, oh, well, we got this large language model to say that it wants to destroy humanity after a large amount of prompting, but really, where does it get that information from? Where does it get that inclination from? It's from all the source material that it processes that was written by humans. And so if the predominant proportion of source material talks about the dangers and threats of AI and how AI could become rogue and seek to destroy humanity, then the large language models will pick up on that and amplify it, because that's what the responses to the questions regarding the future of AI have looked like in the human literature. So in terms of the predominant mass of content about AI being fearful, could that in itself lead to the AI systems amplifying that fear? What are people's thoughts about that? I know Bill gave a thumbs up to that comment. Anybody else, David or Art Ramon?
So I think doomerism is a dangerous psychological attitude. If people feel there is no hope, it drives them into bad places, and we must not end up in a bad place. We must take the issues of AI very seriously, because things could go wrong, just as we should take the issues of nuclear war very seriously. So we should worry about geopolitics going bad. What's going on in Iran and Israel just now deserves some serious attention. We would be naive to say, hey, everything's going to turn out fine, don't worry, we've turned out fine in the past. That would be irresponsible. So we need to evaluate these things seriously, but not from a defeatist standpoint saying, oh, there's nothing we can do, it's all disaster. So I advocate for activism rather than doomerism. I think we need to be wise to figure out what are the failure modes and how can we deal with the failure modes. And the failure modes are partly that these AIs will be very different from human intelligences. They're sometimes described as AIs in the sense of alien intelligences. They sometimes get visual recognition completely wrong in baffling ways. We humans look at it and say, well, this is obviously a pig. And the AI says, this is obviously an aeroplane. And you wonder how on earth you can get that wrong. And it's because it's been very slightly misled by some additional information that's been put there. And if we don't understand how these systems work, we can be misled by their alien conclusions. And it may well be they're reaching alien conclusions about morality too. And not only is there the risk that they will actually calculate things wrong, is that they won't care what we humans actually want. In the same way that we humans, we don't care so much what evolution wants. We were created by evolution with various instincts, which by and large meant we were good at passing on our genes to the next generation. But in a changed environment in which we live, many of these instincts no longer mean that we're great at passing on our genes to the next generation. We are motivated by different things. We are motivated, to use another example from Nate Soares, we're motivated to eat lots of Oreo cookies. Many of us, even though intellectually we know that's not good for us. Why? It's because the instincts that made sense for us in Neolithic times are no longer the ones that make sense for us in this new environment. Well, in the same way with AI, we may train AIs by pointing them at the entire canon of English literature, in fact, the great literature from every language in the world, and it may reach its own conclusions, but in a slightly different environment, it may end up doing things which we humans will say, hey, this is foolish. And the AIs will say, well, I know you humans think this is foolish, but I'm pursuing my own objectives. I've got these objectives here to make money from my corporation or to ensure that my military doesn't get defeated. And so we have to be wise. So it's not just that we are projecting naively the psychological weaknesses of humans into these systems. There are all kinds of other failure modes which needs a lot of attention from us, not a panicked attention, not a fear-mongering attention, but very careful, honest, diligent analysis.
Yes, thank you for your response, David. And I do like the emphasis on the activist approach, that we need to consider potential risks and consider ways to mitigate them without sliding into doomerism or despair. And that latter perspective has been the source of my critique of Eliezer Yudkowsky and his followers, because I have heard comments essentially suggesting that a lot of people who follow Yudkowsky have essentially resigned themselves to an end of the world scenario due to AI in 2 years, and they live their lives like there's no tomorrow. And that is, of course, a self-defeating approach. And if there are enough of them, it could be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Fortunately, I hope and I expect that there will not be enough people to embrace that perspective, but definitely being vigilant about risks is important. Now, interestingly enough, we have a comment from Jason Geringer who says, well, LLMs absolutely fill in the blanks like that based on the source material that they receive, and they simply predict the next character, but an AGI will not be an LLM. It will be a collection of AI types, and certainly Peter Voss also believes that LLMs are not a path to AGI, but you, David, have said it's a false binary to contrast LLMs with alternative approaches to AI. The most important new platforms combine LLM breakthroughs with innovations from these other approaches, for instance, a neurosymbolic approach. So perhaps advances in artificial intelligence and the path toward AGI could be from a suite of models, not a unitary model. So thank you for that. Any other thoughts about the self-fulfilling prophecy comment, Bill or Art Ramon?
Yeah, I mostly fear it being weaponized. I don't think AI is just going to decide to hate humans because of our science fiction written about it. I think it's going to be weaponized somehow. You're going to have a dead man switch, and it's going to continue on. Someone builds in a dead man switch that it no longer requires the human in the loop, and it just goes on doing some malicious activity after it was weaponized. So that would be my fear. But yeah, and what I was sort of alluding to, speaking to Zoltan, I've heard recent reports that the White House or the U.S. government already has an AGI that's can practically, predict the future. So that's interesting to hear that, and that makes me wonder why Trump is flip-flopping on mass deportations if he does have such a AGI that looks into the future. So maybe that's a strategy, flip-flopping strategy. I don't know. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you for those remarks. And Bill, since you gave a thumbs up to the comment by Joseph Wolfson, any thoughts about the self-fulfilling prophecy idea?
Well, it's just my general comments about AI and the future AGI or the present AGI. I think that you really get to know AI when you pretend that you don't know your own specialty and ask AI for its opinion of your specialty. And you find out that it's actually quite wrong all the time. And so AI is relying mostly on hearsay, what's being said in the press. It has no way of distinguishing right from wrong. And one of the things I speak about a lot is critical meta-analysis of peer-reviewed studies, which means not just do a meta-analysis, but actually go through each paper and look at the experimental design and the logic of their conclusions and things like that to make opinions. Now, AGI is supposed to do that. That's kind of what AGI is meant to do, to bring in a human cognitive kind of approach. But I think it's going to be a while before AGI is as smart as humans are. And my biggest fear is that we are going to allow AGI to be, let's say, dumb, and as a result, it's going to make decisions that could possibly eliminate us, especially if we just let it. And so I think we have to put some type of control on AGI until we actually have it completely at the level of human cognitive thinking. The reason I gave the thumbs up on that is because I see that as we are just going to let it happen, okay? And we're afraid of it. We're not going to do anything to block it, and that's what we could end up having to happen. That's all I got.
Yes, thank you, Bill. And what you said resonates with me in the sense that I have sometimes asked various large language models questions about me and my work, and I've seen them hallucinate specific facts. Like one of them said I have a law degree from the University of Nevada, Reno, and I have neither a law degree nor did I attend the University of Nevada, Reno. I mean, I go there for classical concerts, but that's not the same as getting a degree from there. It also hallucinated names of my musical compositions. I asked it questions about my music and it got some general statements correct, but I had to correct it in terms of specific references. And after I corrected it, it tended to give more accurate answers. But one needs to be a subject matter expert on the topics in question in order to be able to know that the LLM is hallucinating. Otherwise, the answer on the surface may seem plausible enough that it could mislead people. And that is something for everyday users to be quite wary of when using generative AI, because one needs to double check the accuracy of factual statements that are being made. Now, David, you have a comment along these lines about Future House and the work that Alex Javronkov is doing with his company in silico medicine.
Yeah, so there are a couple of different examples here. So first, I entirely agree that standard large language models are often frustrating when you interrogate them on something that you know something about. At first, it can seem very convincing. It can often give a number of good answers, and you think, wow, this is great. And then suddenly it gets something spectacularly wrong. So these standard models are not what we should be relying on. But there are people already working on getting more reliable surveys of scientific literature. And one of the most important initiatives, I think, is Future House. Future House has received funding from, if I remember right, Eric Schmidt, the former CEO and then executive chairman of Google. He's also received money from Open Philanthropy. That's Dustin Moskovich, former co-founder of Facebook, amongst others. So they are coming up with some really impressive tools to help accelerate the scientific process, which are less likely to fall into the kinds of mistakes that you'll get from a standard large language model. Then there's what Alex Zavaronkov is doing. I think he is probably the most astute user of AI in the field of biochemistry, because he insists that in order to not be misled by what these AIs do, you need to have people in your organization who are experts in AI, but also who are experts in biochemistry. And if you lack either, you can be misled. So he has developed what he calls a zoo of generative models, and it will take too long to explain everything that he's doing, but there is strong indications that some of the drugs that his AIs have suggested, particular solutions for idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which is age-related scarring of the lungs, something to which more and more people as they age become victim to. He has suggested a drug, or rather his AIs have suggested a drug, which might be a good solution. And the early signs from, I think, the phase 2 tests are very encouraging. So these things are transforming the field, and they can transform it further, provided we're wise about it rather than naive about it. Then I want to circle back to the very interesting point that Art was making about, well, what happens when we use these things in military circumstances. And any sensible military strategist will say, well, of course, we're not going to let these AIs make autonomous decisions. That would be bad, wouldn't it? But then you come to a real-life war situation. We have drones, and drones currently, on the whole, they ask for guidance from the human operators. Should I disable this person? Should I attack now? But in the heat of the battle, especially when drones come up against drones and you have swarms of drones against swarm of drones, we humans are too slow to make a decision. And so there is an inevitable pressure for military leaders to take autonomous decisions, allow the AI to make autonomous decisions there. Drones aren't going away. We're seeing drones being used, of course, in Ukraine and in Russia with some spectacular results, spectacularly bad and spectacularly good. We're seeing them surely in Iran and Israel as well too. Israel are already using AIs in many ways to try and help them pinpoint which citizens in Gaza are those which have double lives as Hamas operatives. It's by no means foolproof and it makes mistakes, but they are using these AIs currently mainly with human approval. But of course, there's going to be pressure for them to let go of that human oversight as well, for fear that they will be outmaneuvered. So we're on a slippery slope here, and we need to strengthen everybody's resolve not to go further down that slippery slope. It's not going to be easy, but what can help us out here is a shared recognition by all sides that, this is just too dangerous. The organizations that develop these tools first won't be the winners. They will be the precipitators of potentially something much worse.
Yes, thank you for those remarks, David.
Let me make a comment.
Yes, go ahead, Bill.
I'm hesitant. I'm debating whether I should say something because I wouldn't have time to follow up on it. But I find that the treatments that Alex has come up for treating idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis to be very naive. And it's a disease that I study a lot. And I think this is an example of the problem that I'm talking about. And we can discuss that in more detail offline, because I can go through why I think that the approaches are naive. But
well, isn't the proof in the pudding?
I don't want to spend time. What's that?
Isn't the proof in the pudding that it goes through the tests if there are better results?
That's saying that's like saying that every cancer drug that's ever gone through clinical studies is perfect. Okay, we have to do better, and we can do better. Okay, and it's like, yeah, we haven't. these things will not cure idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, and just like our cancer drugs do not cure cancer. But
Yes,
there are a lot of ideas that have surfaced that don't have the funding to move forward, and those are being largely ignored. And it's just, I was National Inventor of the Year for my cancer research, so I know a lot on that subject, and I'm also doing a lot of work on idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. So it's a lot more complicated than the models are making it look like, or less. I would say less complicated. Okay, we have to approach it from a whole different angle. That's why I debated whether I could spend a lot of time talking, but I would also to spend more time discussing the subject, I would have to go back to what I've read before and remember what it was. I just remember thinking, oh, he's missed the boat.
Yes, I think that
Alex
may be.
would largely agree. Alex would say he's not going to fix IPF comprehensively with this, but he has something that will be a useful palliative, a useful reversal in some cases, before we get a proper solution which will be attacking aging at a more fundamental level.
Let me just put it a different way. He's ignoring some of the obvious things that should be considered. Okay, so.
Yes, and I think that would be a great subject for an in-depth virtual enlightenment salon as well, either your research into cancer, Bill, or your research into idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, and where you think various approaches that have been pursued have shortcomings, as well as other approaches that you think could be successful but haven't received the requisite funding. And I know, unfortunately, in the scientific community, there are many promising research pathways that could have an impact, but they don't have an impact because there's not enough financial support or because there are regulatory hurdles. And we as the Transhumanist Party need to be quite concerned about that and thinking about how to enable those pathways to succeed. Now, in terms of autonomous weapons, which were discussed, the U.S. Transhumanist Party supports the campaign to stop killer robots. That is part of our platform. And we are concerned about the potential for humans misusing AI. Indeed, I would say our concern about that exceeds the concern in regard to AI becoming rogue and acting against humanity on its own. But if humans intentionally deploy destructive weapon systems without a human in the loop, then that could lead to all sorts of unintended consequences. In particular, one red line that must never be crossed is giving AI any control over nuclear weapons systems, because I could readily imagine scenarios where AI would use dispassionate game theoretic, quote, logic, which I think is actually quite flawed, for the record, to launch a nuclear strike when humans, even through very raw emotional considerations, may restrain themselves. Like, I don't think Donald Trump will launch a nuclear first strike, in part because Donald Trump wants to stay around and enjoy his wealth and power. And those may be not the most salutary motives, but I think they act as a restraining influence on Donald Trump. And I could say the same about Putin as well. But would an AI system have those motives? To some extent, the more venal motives of authoritarian-leaning leaders may be a protection from nuclear war that an AI system would not have. But in terms of autonomous or quasi-autonomous systems being deployed, David, you are aware of this, that Israel had a system called Lavender, as you mentioned, that was used to identify suspected Hamas operatives. And Lavender technically had a human in the loop. So in terms of the actual design of it, Israeli officers were signing off on targeting decisions, but in practice, there was a lot of political pressure on them to just routinely approve the decisions. And that's a concern as well, that even if you design theoretical safeguards, there could be institutional pressures essentially leading people to not really have a whole lot of agency and overriding the AI. So humans need to exercise their will here, and they need to exercise their judgment and discretion. I very much think there always needs to be a human in the loop. Otherwise, we face some potentially terrifying consequences, especially given how the geopolitical situation, the military engagements in the Middle East have been intensifying. I think adding autonomous weapons or even human in the loop systems where the humans are not overruling the AIs would be extremely dangerous. We have Anthony Nielsen joining us. He's our Director of Technology Outreach, and welcome, Anthony. If you've been listening to the Salon with Zoltan, let us know any feedback that you have.
I apologize, I jumped in late here. All I heard was talks about AI and human overrides, and all I will say is from my own experience, having been the person that directly has to train these. I mean, it's like any tool, and I think that's the big thing that I try to express here as Director of Technology Outreach is like any tool, it requires literacy, competency to understand the tool that you're working with. And AI is not like, I mean, it's not an autopilot thing. You can't just trust it to do its own thing. It's not, I mean, anybody that's been watching Elon's promises of having self-driving automobiles can vouch for this. Is, you know, like there's this idea that you know, like people that say we can trust the technology to do its job. No, we can't. We can trust that it's a tool that still needs to be honed and sharpened like any other tool. And as somebody that has been employed to train these AI learning models, you know, on different platforms like Mercor and, there's another one. There's at least 3 or 4 different online language learning AI ML platforms that are employing people like me to, as subject matter experts to train it, and essentially as a result, they are getting very discounted labor because, as you know, AI does not need to take a break or be given employable wages. But at the end of the day, yes, we need to understand what we're working with. I think and with regard to Mr. Zoltan's stance on, you know, being pro versus anti AI, it's like, well, I think AI should be met with a healthy amount of skepticism, but it is a tool just like any other. And the rules as set forth by Isaac Asimov still apply as far as I've talked to any transhumanist, and from my own experience as well. Like we, you know, as long as its primary purpose is to serve us and advance the human condition, whatever that human condition might be, to our advantage, then that to me is transhumanism.
Yes, thank you very much, Anthony. And I very much echo the view that AI is a tool right now, and it's a tool that has its limitations, and it requires a complementary set of human inputs and skills and knowledge in order to be able to deploy that tool effectively. And of course, the tool can be misused if it's not deployed in the correct way. A knife can be misused, a vehicle can be misused, fire, which is one of the oldest technologies, can be misused if humans choose to deploy it incorrectly.
Or like the great, you know, the perfect example is saying, oh, the cars can drive themselves. Well, we see what happens when we let the cars drive themselves right now.
Well,
and you know, being told like, well, it's safe. Well, it obviously isn't.
I've had some good experiences with Waymos in Los Angeles.
Oh,
suffice it to
Waymos are
say.
different. Waymos are a different. They're and that's where understanding the technology that you're using, and the competency, the literacy, the technological competency and literacy is important in my opinion as a transhumanist and as somebody who shares that idea of like, yes, there are these great tools and you can't just trust that it's not magic. I as somebody who gets thrown into a lab and treated like a magician, yeah, it's hard to bridge that gap in understanding and knowledge. But if we treat that healthy amount of skepticism with the correct amount of training and informational, availability, then we can bridge that gap.
Yes, absolutely. And we do have to, unfortunately, conclude our virtual enlightenment salon for today, but comments like yours, Anthony, stress the need to continue to thoughtfully explore the issues surrounding AI and other emerging technologies. I'll leave you with these insights. Arthur C. Clarke's third law expresses that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. In my experience, in regard to particular technologies or approaches, I find that the less people understand about a given technology or approach, the more they tend to think of it as magical. So with that,
Exactly.
Indeed. So with that, we've had a fascinating conversation today with Zoltan and amongst ourselves. I hope that we can all live to see a much brighter future. And for that, we need to live long and prosper.